Hi, everybody. Welcome to English Digest. I'm Stephanie.
I'm Tom.
Hey, it's a history unit. That's one of my favorites. I love history. This is a really interesting article. It never occurred to me that the names of colors had to be created at some point in history. Of course they did. Orange isn't one of my favorite colors, I'll be honest. I don't think I own one piece of clothing that is orange. No, I don't. It's not a good color for me. On the color wheel, for those of you who know about the color wheel, I am a winter, which is dark colors like dark green, dark pink. Those are my colors. But orange is kind of a new name for us. We didn't have it until like the 1600s. We're going to learn how it came about and who's responsible for it, but it's kind of a fun story. So let's get started. We'll read through today's lesson and then we'll talk about it.
It's the color of a sunset or the turning leaves of autumn. It's everywhere in the natural world, but English did not have a specific distinct word for orange until the 1600s. Even today, words for shades of red, blue, and green far outnumber those for the variations of orange. Just think of scarlet, ruby, rust, and maroon. This is only a sample of the words that mean red. When it comes to orange, though, there is just orange. English speakers have always been acquainted with the color orange. However, in Old English and Middle English, it was always described as a combination of yellow and red. In the centuries-old Canterbury Tales, a classic of Middle English literature, a rooster dreams of a yellow-red fox. The author, Chaucer, is regarded as a master of storytelling and the English language. Even so, he could only combine words to clumsily gesture at the color he meant. Not until the orange fruit entered European markets was there the spark of an idea that the color might be entitled to a name of its own. In the early 1500s, Portuguese merchants brought back bright, sweet oranges from their trade voyages to India. At first, Europeans called them golden apples. However, the word orange soon stuck to describe the fruit, and by extension, the color. By the end of the 1500s, William Shakespeare had adopted orange, in combination with other words, to talk about color. By the 1600s, people began to regularly use orange alone to mean only the color, not the fruit. Today, our vocabulary for orange is still mainly limited to citrus, with tangerine joining orange in 1899. It's exciting to see how quickly words can go from unknown to familiar, though. Perhaps you will be the one to pioneer English's next color vocabulary revelation.
Okie dokie, guys. We're going to get started. It's the color of a sunset. Oh, you'll definitely see orange if you're looking at a beautiful sunset. Or the turning leaves of autumn. It's everywhere in the natural world, that's true. But English did not have a specific, distinct word for orange until the 1600s. So even today, words for shades of red, blue, and green far outnumber those for the variations of orange. This particular sentence is packed full of vocabulary words, Tom. So we should probably go a little slower on this one sentence.
Right, so we did not have a distinct or special word for orange until the 1600s, but we've got lots of words for shades of red, blue, and green. And words for those shades of red, blue, and green far outnumber those for the variations of orange. Now, a shade of something is just a slight different hue of something, a different color. So if you're talking about different shades of red, we've got some examples here in the next sentence. You've got scarlet, ruby, maybe crimson, rust, and maroon. They all are kinds of red. They are different shades of red. And then there are different shades of blue, like cobalt blue and ultramarine,
navy blue,
etc., sky blue, electric blue, etc.
Right.
Those are all different shades of blue. And then there are different shades of green, like Kelly green or olive green,
grass green,
etc. There are all sorts of different greens there. But there aren't so many variations for orange. So these shades outnumber the variations for orange. So to outnumber something just means you have more of that thing than something else. If you're in an army, for example, and you're trying to attack another country or something, you better be careful because if you're outnumbered, if they have more soldiers than you do, you could be in trouble.
Oh, yeah. So these words definitely outnumber. The names of other colors outnumber those for the variations of orange. Just like all the other colors, orange has a lot of different shades. As Tom said, different hues. It could be a lighter or a darker. Or sometimes they'll take one color and mix another shade in with it. That still seems like it's that the majority of the color is maybe more red than purple, but if you mix red and purple together, just a little purple, you get something called burgundy. So we've got a lot of those shades too. So there are variations of orange. A variation is just a small difference in something. It could be a change or a difference in something like the amount of something, the level of something, the condition of something, variations. We use variations in music. People will sometimes play a variation on a particular song. It's not what the composer originally wrote. It's a little different from that. It's a variation of the piece. So here we've got variations of orange. Now, we talked about how these other colors have so many other words that we use to describe different shades or variations of the color. But when it comes to orange, there is just, well, orange. Yeah. Do you like orange, Tom?
Not really, but there is one shade of orange that I like.
What is it?
I don't really know the name of it, but there's an oil company in Spain called Repsol, and they have this shade of orange on their products, so I call it Repsol Orange.
Yeah.
I actually like that shade of orange, and I do have one soccer shirt in that shade of orange, although I'm not sure that's the actual correct name of that hue.
But Tom, you would look good in orange. You are a summer. In summer, the summer skin and hair color, you're a blonde originally, and that really would look good on you. Yellow and orange would look great.
Maybe I ought to consider that. Like I said, besides that one shirt, I don't have any other orange clothing. But indeed, there aren't many different shades of orange. There might be if you go to an art store or something like that and look for Copic markers or something like that. You might find some different shades of orange, but the shades of red, blue, and green outnumber those for variations of orange. And again, I already mentioned these different shades of red, but we've got scarlet, ruby, rust, and maroon. And that's just a sample of the words that mean red. And of course, there are lots of other words for blue, different shades of blue and green. But when it comes to orange, there just seems to be only one orange. Now let's move on now to the next paragraph here. It says, English speakers have always been acquainted with the color orange. Now, if you're acquainted with something, or if you are acquainted with somebody, you know that person or you know that thing. You're not really close friends or buddies, but you know each other well enough. You're on a first name basis and things like that. But other than that, you may not know a lot. Yes, we mostly know about the color orange, but we probably don't really know much about the history, and we probably don't know much about different kinds of hues and things like that.
Yeah, so if someone says, do you know John? And you don't know him very well. Maybe you've been introduced before. We're acquainted, yes. Yeah, we're acquainted. I'm acquainted with that. You can also be acquainted with an idea, a concept, a piece of knowledge. So English speakers have always been acquainted with the color orange. However, in Old English and Middle English, long ago, it was always described as a combination of two colors, yellow and red. So they didn't come up with a new word. They would just put red and yellow together. Now, there's a very, very old classic in Middle English literature called Canterbury Tales. It was written ages and ages ago, centuries ago, and it actually uses this mixed word, I guess you can say, yellow-red. And there was a fox in the Canterbury Tales, and that's how they described the color of the fox. It was a yellow-red fox. I would have laughed if I'd seen this. I'd think, why don't you just say orange? That's kind of crazy. Well, they didn't have the word orange invented, or someone hadn't thought of this word when the Canterbury Tales was written. Again, the Canterbury Tales is very old. Canterbury Tales goes back hundreds and hundreds of years.
Okay, so again, in that work of literature, there's a rooster, maybe Chanticleer there. The rooster dreams of a fox that is not orange, but it's a mix of red and yellow. And of course, if you've studied art before, you know that if you mix red and yellow, you get orange. Okay, that brings us to the end of the first part of our discussion for today. It's time now to listen to our Chinese teacher.
大家好，我是派老师。今天讲解的是9月份 Unit 14 Orange, a rich color with a rich history. 这是一份篇章结构的练习题。好，我们先一起解题吧。不过解题前，老师想跟大家强调，篇章结构最重要的就是回填的句子要和前后文连贯，在文意上要承先启后。请大家谨记前后连贯、文意通顺这8字真言，请带着这个原则来答题，才能够解答所有的难题。好，我们现在一起解答第一题，请先看前一句 Even today, words for shades of red, blue, and green far outnumber those for the variations of orange. 请看 outnumber 这个及物动词，如果我们说 A outnumbers B， 就表示 A 的数量胜过 B。比方说 Men outnumber women in the field of science， 在科学界，男性人数比女性多。Far 是副词，修饰 outnumber， 表示远远超出。这整句话的意思是，即使在今天，红、蓝、绿这些色调的词汇数量也远远超过表示成色变化的词汇。而第一题后一句是 When it comes to orange though, there's just orange. 不过提到橙色时就只有橙色。请大家注意，写文章的时候，为了方便读者理解，掌握作者的重点，句子前后文意要连贯，不会跳来跳去的。从第一题前后，我们可以看出作者在讨论各个颜色随着色度变化是否有丰富的词汇与之相应。所以第一题我们选 C。Just think of scarlet, ruby, rust, and maroon. This is only a sample of the words that mean red. 想想鲜红、暗红、赭色和紫褐色，这只是几个表示红色单词的例子。
We're going to take a quick break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back, guys. This is our history unit, and we're talking about something kind of fun today, color. A color called orange. Poor orange. It didn't even have its own name until after the 1600s or until the 1600s. That was a long, long time ago to you guys, but really, it seems like it's fairly recent that we came up with this name orange to describe the color that is a combination of yellow and red together, orange. We found out that today we have lots of especially in English, I have to say. I was pointing out to a friend the other day, Tom, a Taiwanese friend of mine, that we seem to have a lot more color words than you guys. Because they do a lot of qian and shun, and we actually come up with these kind of cute words to represent colors. Like we even have a French blue. We all know that French blue looks really good in a dress shirt for a guy. He looks really sexy in it, I must say, French blue. But we have lots and lots and lots of words for colors, but not so much in Chinese. And it's just a difference in culture. I don't know why we do, but I always found that interesting. Well, looks like English speakers never really liked the color orange too much, or we didn't pay enough attention to it, because it wasn't until the 1600s that orange got its own name. But part of that, today, some of the consequences of that happens to be that there aren't as many words for shades or variations of orange as there are for other colors like red, green, and blue, those primary colors.
Okay, so remember we left off when we were talking about the Canterbury Tales, and Chaucer, of course, is regarded as a master of storytelling, and he's also a master of the English language, but he could only combine those two words to clumsily gesture or kind of hint at or indicate the color that he meant, which we all know as orange. And not until the orange fruit entered European markets was there the spark of an idea that the color might be entitled to a name of its own. So, yeah, they brought these strange kinds of fruits, or this strange kind of fruit from India, from South Asia and Southeast Asia. They brought it to Europe and they looked at it and they thought, maybe the color of this thing should have its own name. It should be entitled to its own name. If you're entitled to something, then you should be able to get that. You have the legal right or you have the claim to receive that thing.
I would say it sure was entitled to its own name. I mean, I even think of the fruit orange and I think, oh, it's one of my favorite fruits. I love oranges. We have orange trees in my backyard where I grew up. I'm in a very hot area of the United States in Arizona. And that's one of our main exports is citrus. We grow a lot of oranges in particular. So yeah, it was about time that orange had its own name. Now, moving back up again, we're going to talk about Chaucer. He was regarded as a master of storytelling. The Canterbury Tales are still popular today. It's considered a masterpiece, a classic. One of my friends actually wrote her thesis on the Canterbury Tales, which I didn't have the heart to tell her I never read. But anyway, it's kind of long too. It's very old and Middle English, so it would be difficult for you guys to understand it. It's sometimes very difficult for native English speakers to understand Canterbury Tales. But Chaucer would try to describe some of the things in his story, and because he didn't have that word orange, it says here he would combine words, put them together to clumsily gesture at the color he meant. If you do something and you're clumsy or you do something clumsily, it just means you're kind of awkward. You're not handling something with a lot of skill or elegance. Well, poor Chaucer didn't have the color orange or the word for orange to even use. So he did the best he could. If you gesture at something, usually you're using your fingers to gesture at someone, to point at someone. But here it just means he was kind of doing the best he could to describe the color without having the word orange. But thank goodness that orange fruit entered the European markets, and that kind of gave someone smart, a spark of an idea that, hey, maybe we should actually give this particular color its own name.
Right, and it's kind of interesting, of course, that the name of the fruit is also the name of the color. So it makes me wonder, why don't we call those apples, why don't we call them reds? You know, here, would you like a red?
Yeah.
Or maybe you'd like to have some purples if you're talking about grapes. But that's not the case. It's just interesting that the word orange refers to both the fruit and the color. And let's go back to the early 1500s, which was quite some time ago. Portuguese merchants brought back bright sweet oranges from their trade voyages to India. Remember, the Portuguese were sailing all over the world. They even came here to lovely Taiwan. And, of course, they established a colony in Macau. right next to Hong Kong there. And so we've got these merchants. They're, buying and selling things around the world. That's what a merchant is, a businessman in a boat, basically. And they brought back these strange kind of fruit from India. And these were oranges, of course, from their voyages to India. A voyage, of course, is a trip you take that involves a lot of adventure, and it takes a long time, and there's a lot of danger. If you're going to say Kaohsiung, for example, for the weekend, we would not describe that as a voyage.
No. I don't think so either. A voyage to me has also always been a big trip or a long trip in space or on the sea. So you're not going to use it for land. You would take a journey on the land or over the land. But if you're taking a voyage, you're usually traveling by sea or going to space, which is really a big voyage. So at first, the Europeans called them golden apples, which is kind of funny. But the word orange soon stuck or just stayed there. It lasted to describe the fruit and by extension, the color. Extension usually means you're reaching out or some other part has been added to make something longer. We use an extension cord if the cord to plug something into the wall isn't long enough. You might want to buy an extension cord. By extension here just means just reaching out a little bit to include that orange. We're just going to use the same word to talk about the color, that we just gave the name to the fruit. So by extension, they also just kind of included the color itself. Now, this phrase, by extension, is pretty special. It has its own meaning. It just means you take the same line of thinking or argument and you just use it a little bit further or a little bit more. So the word orange stuck to describe the fruit. So why not just use that same word to describe the color itself? So if you use by extension, guys, you have to include the preposition by. Be careful how you use that phrase.
It's pretty tricky. So, yes, the word orange was used to describe the fruit. And in addition, or by extension, it was used to describe the color too. The color also. So by the end of the 1500s, William Shakespeare had adopted orange in combination with other words to talk about color. Okay, so orange, I guess, is in Shakespeare as well, but I guess he used it with other words. Shakespeare always does that. He uses different ways to describe things, which is quite beautiful if you understand it. And today, of course, our vocabulary for orange is still mainly limited to citrus or citrus fruit, which, of course, includes grapefruits and oranges and lemons and limes and things like that. Those are all citrus fruits. And we've got tangerine joining orange as a color back in 1899. So, yes, tangerine is a shade of orange.
It sure is, and it's beautiful. And just like orange, the original orange, we got that name from the fruit, tangerine, the fruit, the little tangerine, which is delicious. So perhaps you will be the one to pioneer English's next color vocabulary revelation. If you pioneer something or using this as a verb, but it's also a noun, it means you're a person who comes along and is the first person to do something. There were pioneers that moved from the east part of the United States over to the west, and they were the first people out there. It was dangerous, exciting. They're called pioneers. But if you pioneer something, you're the first person to try a particular method, or maybe you invent something new. So look around. Maybe you can come up with a really good word for a color that hasn't been given its own name yet.
Yeah, it seems like they're coming out with new colors all the time. It's kind of interesting. There are still new colors yet to explore. Okay, that brings us to the end of our discussion for today. Let's listen now to our Chinese teacher.
接着，请看第二题。前一个句子是 The author, Chaucer, is regarded as a master of storytelling and the English language. 中古英文文学经典《坎特伯里故事集》作者乔叟是公认的说书和英文大师，但就算是大师，在书中说到攻击梦中狐狸的颜色，还是用了 yellow red。第二题，我们选 A Even so, he could only combine words to clumsily gesture at the color he meant. 即使是公认的文学大师，乔叟也只能将单字组合起来，拗口地指称他所想的颜色。解题关键在 even so， 呼应了前面的 regarded as a master of storytelling and the English language， 即使是大师。好，第二题空格后的句型比较有变化，老师附带说明一下。Not until the orange fruit entered the European markets 这个句子，这是一个 not until 放句首的倒装句，原句应该是 There was not the spark of an idea that the color might be entitled to a name of its own until the orange fruit entered European markets。哪里倒装呢？主要子句 There was the spark of an idea。我们看到倒装句中 was 放在 there 的前面，这句话的意思是，直到柳橙进入欧洲市场，才出现了一种想法，认为这个颜色应该有自己的名字。接着请看第三题，承接上一段刚刚的句子，提到了柳橙进入欧洲市场，后一句是 At first, Europeans called them golden apples。起初，欧洲人把柳橙叫做金苹果。我们知道英文的代名词，特别在写作当中，必须要有明确的规范指称的对象，要很清楚，不能乱用。所以这里的 them 表示前一句应该会提到 oranges， 所以第三题我们选 B。In the early 1500s, Portuguese merchants brought back bright sweet oranges from their trade voyages to India。在16世纪初期，葡萄牙商人远航到印度从事贸易，回程中带回了色彩明亮又鲜甜的柳橙。最后第四题，前一句 By the 1600s, people began to regularly use orange alone to mean only the color, not the fruit。到了17世纪，大家开始经常单独使用橙 orange 来表示颜色，而不是水果。而在更前面一句 By the end of the 1500s, William Shakespeare had adopted orange in combination with other words to talk about color。到了16世纪，莎士比亚已经会在剧本中用橙色了。我们可以看出这个段落就是依照时间顺序写下来，所以我们选 D。 Today our vocabulary for orange is still mainly limited to citrus, with tangerine joining orange in 1899。 时至今日，我们形容橙色的词汇仍然主要限于柑橘类，而橘红色在西元1899年才加入了橙色。以上就是我们今天的中文讲解，谢谢大家。
That's it for today. Thank you so much for joining us, and hopefully we have given you a new appreciation for the color orange and for the fruit orange. Hey, chow some oranges down after you hear our program. From all of us here at English Digest, I'm Tom.
I'm Stephanie.
Goodbye.
Bye.